We are live. Hello, welcome to those of you who are watching this video. My name is Kelly Baker-Josephs. I'm the founder and editor of Manchineel Seagrape, which is dedicated to publishing open access. Hello. Oh, wait, to those I hear who are watching this video. My name is Kelly. Is that me? Sorry.
You're echoing, so maybe
I think that's me somehow.
Which is dedicated
One
to
moment.
open access. Hello.
it's just
There we go.
echoing. So
Yeah, that was my fault. I had too many windows open. Um, Going again, I'm here with Staceyann Chin to discuss Border Clash, which we recently published. And this is part of a series of conversations with Caribbean playwrights and creators that have published plays in Manchineel and Seagrape. And we would like to thank the Caribbean Digital Scholarship Collective, the Mellon Foundation, and the University of Miami for their support of this series of conversations. And also, of course, thank you, Staceyann, for agreeing to discuss your work with me today.
well, thanks for having me on. I mean, it's always good to talk about work you wrote a long time ago. Every artist wants to do that.
It was. Let me give a little bit of a summary of Border Clash, and then we'll get into the conversation. Border Clash is Staceyann's third one-woman play. It opened at the Bleecker Theater in New York City in 2005, so a little over 20 years ago. It provides snapshots of Staceyann's life as she moves across chronological, geographic, and social borders, growing up in Montego Bay, Jamaica, migrating to Kingston, then to New York. Along the way, she navigates a difficult childhood or several difficult childhood experiences, coming out as a lesbian, also coming out as a lesbian in a hostile environment, compelled exile, and finding her footing as a performance poet in New York in the early 2000s. Here we go. I'm going to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write Border Clash.
That's one of those big, adult writer questions. It's like, okay, now I must say something profound. I think at the risk of the lack of profundity, I write about my own life all the time. I'm among the rare category of writers where my imagination produces very little. And so the thing that I lean into in terms of putting material on paper is really just just writing about my experience. I mean, they tell writers, write about what you know. I mean, I've taken that to the extreme. I maybe only write about what I know. It's perhaps why Octavia Butler remains perhaps one of my favorite writers on the planet, because there's a way that she can construct a world from a pin to an anchor to a wall to a sky to a world to beyond the worlds we know, and the details are so present and so alive. So I envy all you writers in the audience right now who you can make up shit, and can I say that? You can make up things and come up with stories out of them. So the lucky thing with having had, as they say, an unfortunate childhood, or a difficult brush with the patriarchy, and ending up queer, and being an immigrant in New York, and coming from a mother who abandoned you, or whatever might be, the catchphrases of my framework in my life. Is life has provided so much material for me. You know, I don't have to invent so much, because life remains, a mad dash, and then a tumble off a cliff, and then rolling down all kinds of interesting places. So, one of the upsides of having a plenty downs in one's life is being able to take those instances and to turn them into theater or poetry or prose or Facebook posts or Instagram ruminations. There's just so much
Art forms of all
art.
kinds.
Yes.
Do you remember the context of the performance of Border Clash? I don't actually know if it was only performed in New York or performed in other places. So
All
maybe
the
the
plays
first
I've done,
performance.
all the plays that I've done have traveled
Mhm.
multiple places, Michigan, Chicago, DC. Maybe there wasn't a 3 week run, but definitely
Mhm.
we would just kind of throw it up skinny and do it out of town. Um, I remember, as the name suggests, I spent my life, my first 2.5 decades living here in Jamaica, and then, or two and some decades. And then when I moved to America, I remember the process of becoming American. I remember
Mhm.
how difficult that was and how fraught it was with all kinds of deep feelings, feeling as if my settling into New York meant that I was going to lose Jamaica, or that it meant I was less Jamaican, or you know, so I remember being on Broadway and wanting and getting the ads from people saying, we can help you lose your accent in 2 months. And my response to that was, no, I don't want to lose my accent. I don't want to lose. I want to have a Jamaican sounding accent so that it can situate me in the Caribbean, orally. In the audio, I want when I open my mouth, people to know that I am from here. And so a large part of my work, I suppose, is wrestling with that and feeling as if. And when I wrote Border Clash, I was definitely right in the middle of the space where I felt as if I was both American and Jamaican and could not decide which of me stood more firmly in the ground.
Mhm. Makes sense. Am I remembering correctly that you had Carolyn Allen as part of
Carolyn Allen, yes,
yeah.
the dramaturg. She was
Yes.
dramaturg on that one. Yeah, when I was writing and trying to, authenticate my Jamaicanness and, using language that would translate to a theater going audience in New York City, yeah,
Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
I haven't been sure about calling Border Clash a play. You just called it a play yourself. So my hesitation comes from I sent you this earlier, or I think of it when I think of my hesitation, like how to categorize Border Clash. Is one of the ending of If Only Out of Vanity, one of your most popular poems,
Hmm.
where you write if I am not going to say it like Stacey Chin. So, but I'll still say the words. I want to go down in history in a chapter marked miscellaneous because writers could find no other way to categorize me. How would you categorize Border Clash, or your all of your one-woman play shows, let's say, in terms of genre?
I am in love with the poetry of poetry, So even my even my narrative work
Hmm.
is even my narrative work isn't doesn't feel as if it's untouched by the brush of poetry. I guess so many parts of me. I mean, my works grows so organically or maybe inorganically. I mean, maybe it grows like quite digitally, quite, clinically out of me. It's my own work is my life. My life is my work. There is a way that I always feel as if I'm always struggling to house more than one truth in the story. So
Hmm.
when I write the story of my mother, I know that my mother is more than the woman who hurt me by leaving me. You know, yeah, and when I write everyone, I just know that there's multiple scenarios happening all the time. And I don't think essays hold as much. I don't think
Mm.
I don't think one genre, if I had to choose, it would be poetry, but I don't think poetry holds the thread of narrative as well as, kind of prosaic work. Um, so I think I cheat a little bit on both of them. And maybe it's less cheating and more it's, polyamory, where I'm seated quite, you know, comfortably between the two. It's the same way
Mhm.
when my work lives in that liminal space between performance and work that is to be read.
Mhm.
So I don't
Mhm.
know if Border Clash is a poem that is a narrative poem or if it's a poetic essay or a poetic telling. Yeah, I always feel as if there's always so much going on, that there's poetry in all of the work I write. There's, a little bit of essay, a little bit of, political rant, a little bit of like soapboxing. There's always, I think I use everything the way that Jamaicans use everything to tell a story. They use their bodies, they use, the English language, they use patois. The average Jamaican is quite animated in its use of, I don't know, literary devices for telling a story, just even in the market
Okay.
or on the side of the road, or when your grandmother telling you something in the evening, or your father just must tell you what happened in traffic. It must always be poetic and dramatic and espousing and rousing.
And all the things. I'm remembering. So is your book of poetry is called Crossfire. I'm thinking of
Oh,
crossings and just
yeah. But
everything
Crossfire
crossing
is caught in the middle,
in between. Yeah. So you're
Yeah.
constantly. So I recognize in the same vein, I recognize parts of your poetry, parts of your memoir, which I'm guessing maybe you were working on when you were working on Border Clash. When was the so this comes out in 2005. The
Right. Yeah, and
mem
2005 is when I started working on, maybe 2004 is when I started working on The Other Side of Paradise. Even The Other Side of Paradise is about, it's about, across something, transgressing,
yeah. Yeah, I can see those intersections. Um, I'm shifting a little bit in my questions right now. When in publishing Border Clash, right, I was thinking of it mostly as providing it as for people who work on your work, research, people who think about queer Caribbean writings, who think about Bildungsroman in Caribbean literature, etc., and also for teaching in the classroom. I've been wondering how it might work for someone else, or a cast of someone else's, a group of someone else's, if we want to have more than one person to perform it. Do you think that the material could travel in that way, or has it traveled in that way?
lots of people have used the work. I mean, my favorite performance done by someone else of my work is a poem called Equality
Mhm.
by a bunch of, I would say, second graders. There's a poem called Equality that I did on at the March on Washington, at the um the the Equality March on Washington, where just before we gained the right to marry as queer people in the U.S. Um, and I was, every time I watch it, to see these small kids saying words like "from the Golden Gate to the Statue of Liberty," from, Florida to Niagara, every right for every resident, every right for every resident. I mean, and, they were, I'm getting goose pimples now, because I think stories are transferable. The reason they resonate with people is because human beings are at the same time just like everyone else and completely unlike anyone else. I mean, every movie that's ever been made, every poem that has ever been written, every song that has ever been sung references, evokes, troubles the water around, asks the question of who am I and who am I in relation to others? Or not in relation to others, which is also asking in relation to others. And so like I feel like when I was young, I thought myself unique. I thought I was one in a million, no one else in the world like me. Um, and as I get older, I'm realizing that I'm so grateful for the ways I am like everybody else. I'm so deeply grateful for other people who allow me to see that survival is possible. And I can only see that because I see myself in them. Um, I'm currently in the middle of menopause, which it's one of those experiences that it is, on the one hand, people can tell you about the hot flashes, the brain fog, the sleepiness, the body's changing, everything. They can tell you all about that, the irritability, but they don't know which one of them you'll get. So you don't know in what combination or what it will look like inside of your own life. And, so again, it's like, life is a long series of adolescence, where every few years you enter a new chapter of adolescence, and is it okay, am I getting my period, or am I you know gonna get pubic hair, or am I gonna get pimples, or will I turn into a raging angry being, or will I become, you know all of the things that happen to you. And every time I think you struggle with that, because as a woman of 53 years old, I find myself reminding myself that I survived the 12, 13, 14, 15 years. I survived that. And so I will survive this period of change that my body is doing things I don't understand or certainly don't agree with. um, and you just have to kind of carry on. You have to pick up the same legs and move them forward. You have to lift your arms and hug your child. You have to raise the pen and write a poem. You have to, you know, press that little button for the Zoom to come on. You have to do all the things that make life, livable and your own choice. And in many of those choices, it becomes, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I think stories are transferable. And so when I read Maya Angelou's work, I mean, she's a Black woman, but she's not Caribbean. And, she didn't write work that was overtly queer, but it sounds like me. When I read Maria Rilke, I'm deeply, John Donne, you know, I've read many John Donne pieces, and I couldn't be any less like John Donne, and I'm moved by it. T.S. Eliot is one of my favorites. I let us go, then you and I mean, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. It's this white man who probably had nothing in common with me, but those words resonate, hundreds of years later in a body that looks completely different from his. And because there's truth in the story, I think. So as long as the stories are true, not necessarily the facts of them, but the spirit of them, if they're true, if the spirit is true, then the spirit transfers, walks across generations, across bodies, across experiences.
So, all the way around to saying yes. I think it's an opening though to the next question that you juggle a lot of heavy topics in Border Clash. Have difficult relationship with your mom, sexual assault, the melancholy of migration. But as with much of your work, it's presented with humor or some humor. I'm interested in this question of what do you think the function of humor is in Jamaican or Caribbean drama or performance?
I think I rarely seen anyone in Jamaica tell a story which did not have humor as one of its main ingredients. And again, I patting my chest and saying, I'm Jamaican. But
Yeah.
I think that's how I survived my childhood.
Mm,
Um, by taking note of how ridiculous everything was, even though it was very difficult. Um, it's also how I moved through the journey to make peace with what happened.
mhm,
Um, I think most things can be put through a lens of humor, and the things that you can't, maybe you pack humor around it. And so the humor provides a buffer
mm,
between a thing that could re injure you. And so, separate and apart from the fact that I grew up with tragedy ensconced in humor, there was a man who they called Ronnie,
mhm,
and he only had one leg. I mean, but that's like typically Jamaican. You know, I remember coming out in the front, like my cousin had given me a dress that had was too big for her, and I put the dress on and I came out and I twirled, and my aunt's comment was, "Look at the dish towel turned tablecloth," and that's her way of saying I look nice. Um, and I remember being pleased by it, that she was calling me, that she was now noting my movement from dishcloth to tablecloth. Um, and I looked at it again when I was writing the book, and it was hurtful to me when I was writing the book. And then now that I have come back to Jamaica to live, I'm hearing those things differently now. And perhaps I'm hearing them differently because I'm no longer as vulnerable.
mhm,
So when I hear them, I can hear the laughter in them. Um, but I think it's how we survive. Like, I use it to survive. And I also, one of the things that my editor said to me when I was writing The Other Side of Paradise, and it had so much, like, I mean, this memoir has so much like trauma in it, where people just kind of like really was just pummeling at that poor kid who I was. And I think I was getting knocked about so much, and I was trying to recall all the episodes that I had been knocked about every time. And I remember my editor called me one morning and she goes, "I read your draft, and you have to give your audience a chance to survive it. Because if they can't survive it, they won't finish it. And if they won't finish it, they won't sell." But more to the point, I guess, is if they don't finish it, then the story doesn't get told.
mhm,
So I don't think that the telling of the story is in actuality reliving it. I think that definitely the way that I tell a story, it's a roadmap for those coming after, or those caught in the woods of it still. A light
okay.
at the end of the tunnel, for people to, a reminder that says, "Hey, I did the same thing. I came through the same thing. And look, there's light here," because when you're in it, you can't see the light.
Mhm,
And I don't write so much for posterity. I don't believe um, the way that books are being handled and stories are being marketed and put forward now, I don't believe that all these stories will survive. And so I write for the people who are here right now, primarily. And if I'm really lucky, then someone else, 5 or 6 generations from now, will get to read it as a historical document. Um, but right now, I write for the people who are living here now.
Do you think performance does that more than your published work? Because there is that tension between the two, right? We think of the published work as for posterity and performance as for the now, and a lot of the content of Border Clash um, does get end up in the other side of paradise, which is a different genre, but also the published form at the time. Do you think that there's a tension between that, or does it fit with your belief in writing for the now that uh, you gravitate towards performance?
Well, we live in a world where nothing is for only the now anymore.
And it's true. Here we are publishing Border Clash.
Yeah, but the world has changed so much that even if it's not published in a book or published in a place where it's recognized as a part of the canon, I think we live in a world now where no matter what work it is, when it's public facing, unless someone makes a decision not to film it, it exists somewhere, as the performance. And if there's more than one performance and there's more than one recording, then you get to compare and look at why one was this way and one was the other way. But if there's only one, then it becomes a record of the time.
Mhm.
So I don't think of anything of mine as, oh, it's ephemeral. It just,
Mm.
comes in and disappears. Because even if it isn't recorded in its entirety, somebody has a phone that is taking photographs and some version of the narrative will exist. I used to be a long time ago quite the snob, paying attention more, giving more weight to the written work. But I have to work harder now to find written work of things to consume every day. So even when I'm keeping up with the news, I don't have a newspaper that comes to my door that I read. I'm getting my news from the anything that's topical and current and updated. I'm getting my news from the television. I'm getting my news from the internet, mostly videos. Anything that is long form in terms of writing
Mhm.
is not going to be up to date because you need time to research and write and edit and permissions to print or whatever. But I find that I have to work now to make sure I'm reading in terms of my intake of just the news, just looking at the news alone. And
Mhm.
then, movies are becoming so much more complex and there's so much more being put into them. And, it's not just this flat screen, it's a more interactive process for yourself and the movie. The themes are, I don't know, just more things that they can do with it, more twisting and bending of the story. And so film has become more more interesting than it was to me, say 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So I'm interested because now I can watch the film and I can read 5 essays about the film, and then I can go and read the conversations with the actors after, and the conversations with the director, and the conversations with the screenwriter. So there's like plenty of ways to participate in the process of storytelling without it being only on the page. Like the page seems to be like a very private activity. The more time goes by, is the more a piece of written work is a very private activity that I spend time with and that I make up my own response and my own world about it.
we're right at time, but I want to make sure that I ask, what are you currently working on?
I'm working on my working title is Prodigal. Because I left Jamaica when I was 25, and then I went and did a whole bunch of stuff and wrote about being away, and then I came back here when I was 48, and now I'm 53. I'm shifting my base again back to New York, but I will still be um, coming between back and forth because my kid will be in school in New York, and we will be here, and I will be back and forth, once or twice a month to run events at the farm and like manage the team here. And there's a way that I live in the liminal space, like it's either prodigal or it's between uh privilege and prejudice. About being here in Jamaica. So I'm writing that, I have like a 568 pages of text that I have to sift through and figure out what makes sense and what needs to be tossed and what can be kept. And all this while I'm, you know, steering a big hefty farm community. For those of you who want to look and see what we're doing, you should go to IG and do Kindred on the Rock. Kindred, like Octavia Butler's book, Kindred on the rock like the island Jamaica. Kindred on the Rock on IG, and Google us and come visit us.
What is Prodigal? What are you aiming for generically? Or you don't know yet?
I never know. I just write it and then it comes out however it comes out, and then we'll see.
Where it goes.
I allow the story some freedom in dictating its
It's one.
identity.
Cool. Maybe it'll be more than one.
I think so. I mean, it's a lot of pages.
Cool. Thank you so much, Staceyann.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank those of you watching for watching. I'm going to end the all right, give me a moment because this is always the steps. We're gonna stop here. We're going to stop here.